Hi friends, we are back for chapter 2 of Stink, the Incredible Shrinking Kid. We left off at chapter 1 where we learned about Stink and how he is the shortest in his class. He's a head shorter than his sister and he doesn't like being short. Chapter ended with Stink being measured by his sister and he was shorter than he was in the morning. So starting out chapter 2, shrink, shrank, shrunk. When Stink woke up the next morning, his bed felt as big as a country. The ceiling was up there with the sky, and it was a long way down to the floor. When he went to brush his teeth, even the sink seemed too tall. Yeah, I really am shrinking, said Stink, checking himself out in the mirror. Were his arms a little shorter? Was his head a little smaller? Stink got dressed. He put on up and up down striped pants and up and down striped shirt. What's the stripes? Asked Judy. Makes me look taller, said Stink. If you say so, said Judy. What? If you really want to look taller, here's what you do. Judy handed him a fancy shampoo type bottle. Put this hair gel on your hair and leave it in for 10 minutes. Then you'll be able to comb your hair so it sticks straight up. Sticking up hair will make you look taller. Stink put the goopy goop in his hair. He left it in his hair while he made his bed. He left it in his hair while he packed up his backpack. He left it in his hair all through breakfast. We could play baseball and you could be shortstop, Judy told him. So funny I forgot to laugh, said Stink. Judy pointed to Stink's hair. Hey, I think it's working, she said. Really? Do you think people will notice? They'll notice, said Judy. Stink ran upstairs to look in the mirror. Hey, my hair! It's orange! Don't worry, said Judy. It'll wash out in about a week. I look like a carrot, said Stink. Carrots are tall, said Judy, and she laughed all the way to the bus stop. Stink's friend Elizabeth sat next to him in class. They were the shortest kids in class 2D, so they sat up front. Hi, Elizabeth, said Stink. I'm not Elizabeth anymore, she told Stink. From now on, call me Sophie of the Elves. Okay, I have a new name too, the Incredible Shrinking Stink. But Stink, you look taller today, said Elizabeth. It's just the hair, said Stink. I'm still short. Not to an elf. To an elf, you'd be a giant. To an elf, you would be the elf king. Thanks, Sophie of the Elves, said Stink. The bell rang, and Mrs. Dempster passed out spelling words. 3 of the new words were shrink, shrank, shrunk. At lunch, the dessert was strawberry shortcake. And in reading, Mrs. Dempster read everybody a book called The Shrinking of Treehorn. The book was all about a boy who plays games and reads cereal boxes and gets shorter and shorter. He keeps shrinking and shrinking. Then, just when he becomes a normal size again, he turns green. Any comments? Mrs. Dempster asked when the story was over. Stink raised his hand. Is that a true story? Mrs. D laughed. I'm afraid not, she said. It's fantasy. Fantasy's my favorite, said Sophie of the Elves, especially hobbits and elves. Are you sure it's fantasy? Asked Stink. Because that kid is a lot like me. Because I'm... Stink could not make himself say shrinking. Because you both turned another color? Asked Webster. Because I like to read everything on the cereal box too, said Stink. Okay, said Mrs. Dempster. Let's see. Who is going to carry the milk from the cafeteria today? Stink was barely paying attention. He never got asked to carry the milk. How about Mr. James Moody? Asked Mrs. Dempster. Me? Asked Stink. He sat up taller. I get to carry the milk? Stink walked down the 2nd grade hallway. It looked longer than usual, and wider. He took the stairs down to the cafeteria. Were there always this many stairs? His legs fell shorter, like they shrank, shrunk. Stink got the milk crate. He carried the milk up the stairs, past the office, and past the teacher's room. Now his arms felt shorter. He needed a rest. He set the milk down outside the nurse's office. "Hi, Stink," called Mrs. Bell. "I see you have a new hairstyle." "My sister turned it orange," said Stink. "So what brings you here today? Headache? Sore throat? There's a lot going around, you know." "Is shrinking going around?" asked Stink. "Because I think I'm shrinking." "As in getting shorter." "You're shrinking? What makes you think so?" "My sister. She measures me every morning, and I'm always 3 feet 8 inches. But last night she measured me before I went to bed, and I'd shrunk. I was only 3 feet 7 3/4 inches. I'm a whole quarter inch shorter." "Don't worry, honey," said Mrs. Bell. "Everybody shrinks during the day. We're all a little shorter at night than we are in the morning." "Seriously?" "Seriously, from gravity. And all the walking around we do, the pads between our bones shrink during the day. At night, they soak up water and expand again." "We all shrink?" asked Stink. "That's what I'm saying. Everybody shrinks. Scientific," said Stink. I found out an answer to one of my questions that I had before I started the book. I wanted to know if Stink was his real name or if it was a nickname. And during this chapter, Mrs. Dempster called Stink Mr. James Moody. So now I know his real name is James and his nickname is Stink. All right, chapter 3 will be coming up soon.